Lammy.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I congratulate the member for Warrington and Leamington for bringing this this very good debate this afternoon. There will be members of the House who, like me, perhaps grew up in a home where there was low pay. By that I mean there were moments where, in our house, most of the bills were, or the utilities were metered growing up in the 70s and 80s, where you didn't have the 50p and the electricity went off and you lit the candle. It wasn't always clear that the fridge would be completely full. And I remember age 12, when my father left our home, focusing on my mother's salary at the time, and it was just above 12,000, and realising that it was going to be a struggle to survive on that much money. That was, of course, in the mid-1980s. Here we are in 2014, and I actually think that the prospect of a good life, not of being wealthy, not of having lots of money, but doing typical jobs, not just actually a cleaner or a security guard, but a secretary, working in a shop. These are the kinds of jobs where actually this call for a living wage becomes hugely important and desperate in our country. I remember the cleaners that came to see me, who cleaned the local college, women that looked like my own mother, pleading to me to retain their jobs because the college had said that to get them to the living wage, which was their demand, they would have to cut their weeks and their hours such that they were only doing 32 weeks a year, and these women didn't know how they would survive. And because of a fight with the GMB union, we got those women to that situation in which they were getting the living wage. I think also the paradox in my own constituency of a Premiership football club. A Premiership football club that spent 103 million on new players once Gareth Bale left last summer, still not managing to pay its bar staff, caterers, security guards, cleaners, the living wage. I might say I don't want to signal out my local club, because this is true of the entire Premiership. A Premiership where people see millions and millions of pounds. Week on week, players in 2 hours earn as much as someone in a year on a living wage. That is the country that we live in 2014, and frankly it shames our nation that we are having this debate so long after the birth of the welfare state. But in these times we recognise, and we must recognise too on this side of the House, it cannot be right that in our last year in office we were spending 21.5 billion on housing benefit. Why should British taxpayers top up the incomes of people living in homes when surely it is British employers who should be paying that sum? So this is a profound debate that has begun in relation to a living wage, but it also cuts to much bigger questions about the kind of society that we live in and the kind of society that we must surely become in this first part of the 21st century. This is linked, I think, to why there are people in Britain wanting to travel off to fringe political interests increasingly. Because what they don't see when politicians use phrases like affordable housing is any sense that that housing is affordable. Here in London boroughs like Kingston and Richmond, where rents have gone up 40% in 2 years, in my own borough, Haringey, 20% in 2 years, the idea that £1,400 a month is affordable is a joke to most families in this city. It takes the lion's share of the little money that they have. And of course we spend it in another way, because these Parents, as has been illustrated by the honourable gentleman, the member for Birmingham earlier, these families, these parents are not able to spend time with their children. As a consequence, in this country, we have many children raising themselves in their homes with all of the disastrous outcomes that can meet those children along the way. So paying the living wage is essential, but it cuts also to the nature of our economy. Here in London, 88% of that economy is the service sector. And we use these phrases, the service sector, and it sounds kind of nice when you say it, but when you peel it back, actually a smaller and smaller proportion of it is the public sector, shrinking because of cuts to local government, cuts to the health service, and cuts to the public services that we all recognise. Actually, the lion's share of that service sector is retail. And the truth is, there are lots of folk trapped in jobs that don't only pay well, but they're not really clear where they're travelling to that can pay well. I grew up in a house where my mother made that journey from 12,000 up into the 20s over the course of a 15-year period. I'm very grateful to Unison for helping her with the early Union Learn schemes and shop stewards pushing her. Rose, you can do better by these kids, you can move on. I remember the City and Guild certificate on our wall. Indeed, I've still got it somewhere in the loft. I've got to dig it out after this debate. Skills is essential. And yet when we look across the country and we look at FE and we look at the debates in this house that are predominantly about young people, where are those night schools? Where are the FE colleges that are actually open at 10, 11, 12 at night when ordinary working people can actually skill up in this way? Or is it simply that these jobs have left our economy? Because that is, I think, the nature of the hourglass economy. So yes, we call for a living wage because it's essential, but we have also got to ask profound questions about why our economy seems to be leaving so many people in work but in poverty. And I remind the House, I realise that this is a regional problem, but I do say in the context of London, London has the biggest inequality of all regions in the country, and there are 640,000 families here on low pay. That is a major, major challenge to the future prospects of this city that we will surely need to do something about over the coming years. We can only do it if we ask challenging questions about the economy, if we push employers hard and firm to meet their obligations for a living wage over the coming months and years. We must see many, many more join this fight. But I applaud, of course, Citizens UK for all their work. I applaud the unions and the churches and faith communities for pushing and pressing for more. But we in this House will have to really heed what the public are telling us if we don't want to see fringe parties occupying this debate with a very simple message. And that simple message is blame it on the immigrants, we'll solve the problem by pulling out of Europe. I wish it were that simple. The problems are deep and profound, and that is why we must meet this need as quickly as possible.
Stephen Tim.